When the Polish Netflix series The Mire premiered in the US in 2020, I was intrigued by it, but I thought it didn't have as much tension or urgency that could have been present. Well, the new season has now released, so is it worth watching? After a dike breaks and floods part of their town, a teenage boy is found dead among the floodwaters, prompting detectives to go searching for who he is and how he came to die there. The first season took place around the mid-80s. Season 2 now returns to a new decade, but where secrets still remain. It's 1997, and I like how the show works in the return of our journalists, Pyotr and Vanich, even though this is about 13 years since Season 1. Now, Pyotr and Vanich are journalists, and where Pyotr was the newbie in Season 1, he's now returning to the paper to be the new editor. Vanich is semi-retired and doesn't really do too much for the paper now. I mean, you figure in Season 1 he was older and had already spent a long time at the paper. This season contains a lot of intrigue and tension, and I didn't feel the mistrust of everybody as much this go-round, though. In the first season, it was just still in the midst of, or maybe just coming out of, communist oppression, if you will, and so things now are more modern. While there still is some sense of the old ways, I didn't get the feel that everyone was so mistrusting or able to scheme the system simply because so much fear existed. We're introduced to some new players this season, and the show really focuses more on the police angle than the journalistic side. But the journalist perspective is still present, which does help to round out the entire story. We're watching the story being investigated from two different sides, too. I mean, one is from that police side, with a new detective named Joss, who has been assigned to the town. It's more of a disciplinary reason why she's reassigned, but she shows to be one of the more competent detectives, and one that actually wants to solve the case. She's not looked upon favorably or even trusted much. I think partly that is because of her beliefs and her mannerisms, but then also because of just who she is. She pushes boundaries of the norm, even though she doesn't flaunt it or even outwardly do so. The other side of the investigation comes from Pyotr and his journalistic sense. And I like how the show reintroduces him into the narrative and he begins to play a key role, but from a different angle. I also enjoy how the show has continued some of the personal storylines that were introduced in Season 1. But what's great in this is that you can just start watching Season 2 without having seen the first, and I think you're going to be okay. Sure, you're not going to have some of the context of the main players like Pyotr and Vanich, but I think if you're really itching to watch this one, you can just dive in because the story is able to stand on its own. Now, while Vanich isn't a major player this season, his character does get some background that helps to explain other events within the season. And the story fills in some mystery with flashbacks from when Vanich was just a young man towards the end of, I think it's World War II, and the Russians had camps within Poland. And it begins to delve deeper into why the forest is considered haunted or cursed, and where all the bodies came from when the flood happened. I think these flashbacks work well to develop a lot of Vanich's character because we see what he experienced and the fights he took on to protect his ideals. And these also show the demons that still haunt him. And while these flashbacks are great to develop the character of Vanich, I'm not sure they're 100% necessary though for the overall mystery that's being told to us. I think it provides more background and depth to just the larger story as a whole, which spans 2 seasons so far. This season has 6 episodes that are right about an hour long each. It will take you a stretch to binge, but it's doable. And the season keeps the intrigue going by introducing some double crosses, a lot of scheming, and some unexpected twists, which are really well timed because just when you think it's wrapped up, a new bombshell is dropped. And there are also some story elements that help to add urgency to the mystery. During some parts, there is a ticking clock where peril is involved so that there's some kind of consequence that's looming. And despite the mystery and urgency, there are parts that I felt are fairly obvious and predictable. Not all of it, mind you, but there were spots where I was like, I bet this is going to happen, or this person is involved in this way. Sure enough, I was right. And I don't think those necessarily ruined the tension, though. I mean, especially because there were other portions that were very unexpected to me. Now, the pace of the show is a little slow in spots. While we feel a sense of that urgency at times, it's not just the ever-present feeling. Then there are good portions of episodes where it's slower and dramatic, but it's still forward progressing. Now, the set and costume designs are really well done. The cars, wardrobe, and music all have a feel that puts us right into the late 90s era. At the end of the show, I like that the mystery does resolve and most of the pertinent questions are answered. But I also really appreciate that some of the story elements could be used to take us into another season. Maybe they're going to skip forward another decade or so. Overall, I enjoyed this season and felt it was a stronger and more engaging story than the first season presented. I enjoyed the mix of characters and all the grittiness of the overall look and feel of the show. There is sex, nudity, a ton of profanity, and a lot of violence. I give Season 2 of The Mire 4 out of 5 couches. So have you seen the show? I'd love to know your thoughts on the mystery. Just let me know what they are in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.